I waited all day for his good luck text before my job interview. It never came. When I got the offer, he said, "Oh, that was today?" I didn't argue, but on his birthday, I forgot something too. What I forgot ended everything. I sat in my car for almost 20 minutes before I realized I hadn't even taken off my seatbelt. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hear everything. The soft tick of the cooling engine, the distant hum of traffic, the way my own breath seemed too loud in the tiny, fogged-up space. My phone rested in my lap, screen up, like it had something more important to do than light up for me. But it didn't. No buzz, no vibration. No "good luck, babe," not even a simple "thinking of you." I tapped the screen again, still nothing. I had refreshed my inbox 5 times now, like some desperate ritual. The email was still there, glowing at the top, subject line bold and clear. Job offer official confirmation. I should have been smiling. I should have been screaming or crying the happy kind. I should have been calling him, blurting out the words before they dissolved on my tongue. I got it, they picked me. But instead, I was sitting in a silent car, staring at a silent phone, feeling more hollow than I ever expected to. And the thing is, I didn't need confetti or balloons. I didn't need some over-the-top gesture or Instagram post. I just needed him to remember, to care, to say something. Even just a "you've got this." But all I got was the absence of a message. A void that said more than words ever could. I thought about this morning, how I'd stood in front of the mirror rehearsing my answers, voice shaking, palms damp. How I'd smiled despite the knots in my stomach. How I'd looked at our framed photo on the dresser, him grinning with his arm around me, and whispered, "Wish me luck." He was still asleep then. I hadn't wanted to wake him. I thought he'd text when he got up, then maybe after coffee, then maybe on his lunch break, then maybe before my final round. And now it was hours later and the interview was over and the offer was in. And still nothing. I unlocked my phone again, clicked into our messages. The last one was from me. "I'm heading in now, send me luck." Read at 9:12 am read, but not answered. I stared at the screen until the brightness burned my eyes. Then I locked it again and rested my forehead against the steering wheel. I wasn't mad, not yet, not exactly. It was something else, something worse. A slow, simmering ache. The kind that builds when you realize the person you go to first doesn't think of you the same way. I thought back to the night I told him I was applying for this job. How I paced the living room nervously, explaining how big the opportunity was, how it could change everything. He had nodded absently from behind his laptop. "That's great, babe," he'd said without even looking up. "Go for it." And I had. Every step of this process, from the first application to the third interview, I kept hoping he'd start caring more. Kept waiting for him to ask how it was going, to offer advice, to celebrate even the small steps. But he didn't. And I kept telling myself he was just distracted. Busy, stressed about work, not great at showing emotion. I made excuses for him like they were love letters. I sat back up in the seat, blinking hard, trying not to cry. Not here, not now. Instead, I looked at the offer email again. They'd written my name twice. "We're thrilled to offer you the position, Havana." My name, the sound of it made me want to cry harder than his silence did. Because they saw me. They wanted me, they recognized what I could do. And the one person I wanted to share that with, he'd forgotten. Or worse, he hadn't forgotten. He'd seen the message and just didn't care enough to answer. I opened my notes app, typed a line. Deleted it, typed another. I got the job. But I didn't send it, because something inside me twisted at the thought of giving him more access to this moment. This win. This thing I earned on my own, in spite of his indifference. I stared out the windshield. The office building in front of me glowed golden in the late afternoon light. People were walking out now, briefcases in hand, jackets swinging, heads high. I should have been among them. Instead, I was frozen. Still. Like if I stayed quiet long enough, the phone might buzz. The universe might remember I'd been holding my breath all day. It didn't. And in that silence, I realized something I didn't want to admit. Rejection from the job would have hurt less than this, because that would have made sense. This was betrayal dressed up in forgetfulness, and I wasn't sure what scared me more, his silence or how familiar it was starting to feel. Now I'm at my family house for dinner. Family dinners are supposed to be comforting. Ours never are. Not since Mira decided she'd taken over as the family's emotional compass and judge and jury. She's my older sister by 6 years, which apparently qualifies her to speak on my behalf before I open my mouth. We sat around the table. Mira, her husband Azim, my mom at the head, and me in the same seat I always took, end of the table, right under the squeaky ceiling fan. It still clicks on every third rotation. Some things never change. We were halfway through dinner when she said it. "So, let me get this straight, he didn't even text you." She said it lightly, casually, like it was just idle conversation. But her eyes flicked over to me with that look. The "I've been waiting for you to admit it's a problem" look. I swallowed my bite of rice and forced a smile. He's been busy. He probably just forgot what day the final round was. Azim cleared his throat and looked down at his plate. He always avoids taking sides, which, ironically, always puts him on Mira's. "Still," she continued, cutting into her chicken, "if my husband forgot something like that, we'd be having a very different dinner right now." Azim chuckled under his breath. She didn't say anything. She just kept eating, slow, methodical, her eyes downcast, which for my mother said everything. That was the moment my throat tightened. Because when Mom doesn't approve, she doesn't lecture. She withdraws. She eats in silence. She lets her disappointment become a fog that creeps into the room, thick and undeniable. I set my fork down. The food suddenly felt heavy in my mouth, like I'd bitten into something that wasn't meant to be eaten. "It's not that big a deal," I said quickly, too quickly. "It was just a text." Mira leaned back in her chair, brow raised. "You waited all day for that text." I hated how easily she read me. Hated how, even after moving out and having a life of her own, she still knew how to poke the softest parts of me without even lifting her voice. "I got the job, though," I added, trying to redirect the mood. "That's what matters." "Oh, sweetheart," she said, and that's how I knew she wasn't done. Because Mira only called me sweetheart when she was about to say something unforgivable. "You deserve to celebrate that with someone who remembers when it's happening." The words didn't shout, they sliced. I felt my mother's eyes on me now, still unreadable but focused, and I knew exactly what she was thinking. "Is this what you're settling for?" I took a sip of water. My hands were shaking slightly. Mira stabbed a piece of cucumber and chewed thoughtfully, like she was weighing how much more she should say. "Look," she continued, softer now, "you've worked so hard. You've always been the one who shows up early, stays late, overprepares, and still says sorry for taking up space. And now, you're finally getting recognized for that. This isn't just a job offer, it's a moment. And if he can't show up for you in this moment, when does he?" I didn't have an answer, because I'd been asking myself the same thing for days. I had replayed the silence in the car like a bad movie scene, refreshed his chat bubble over and over, like something might change if I just looked long enough. He hadn't texted when I told him I got the offer. He didn't even ask how it went, but I'd excused it. I always did. He's not a text person. He's forgetful. He's got a lot on his plate. He doesn't always know how to express himself. I'd turned all his flaws into cute little quirks. I called his absence independence, his coldness emotional restraint, his selfishness introverted. But now, sitting here, picking at my dinner while my sister spelled out what I'd been too afraid to say, I realized what I was really doing. I was lowering the bar so he could meet it while standing still, and I was still the one handing out the gold stars. "I'm not trying to tell you how to live your life," Mira added, softer this time. "But I've been in that kind of love before. The kind where you're waiting for crumbs and calling it a meal. It doesn't get better with time, it just gets harder to walk away." I blinked back the sting in my eyes, not from what she said, but from how much I needed to hear it. Still, I wasn't ready to hand her the win. I sat up straighter and said, "Not everyone shows love the same way." "True," she replied gently. "But if you're the only one doing the showing, is it even love?" No one spoke for a while. Even the fan above us felt quieter. I excused myself early, said I was tired. On my way out, Mom hugged me a little longer than usual. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. I drove home in silence, trying to decide what hurt more, his forgetting or Mira remembering exactly what I was too scared to say. When I got home from dinner at Mira's, I didn't cry. I wanted to, but the tears felt used up. Or maybe just tired of not being met with anything. Instead, I did the thing I always do when I feel on the edge. I texted Zara. Me, you up? Zara, always tea or wine. I sent the wine emoji and drove over in sweatpants and a hoodie. No makeup. Hair still smelling faintly of my mom's kitchen. Zara answered the door barefoot with a half-eaten cookie in one hand and a look that didn't ask questions, at least not right away. She always knew how to leave space. Her apartment smelled like eucalyptus and vanilla. Her lights were warm and dimmed low. It felt like stepping into a version of myself I could almost believe in. I sank into her couch while she uncorked a bottle, poured 2 glasses, and handed me one like a peace offering. We didn't talk about him at first. We talked about work. About the weird guy in HR who keeps using too many emojis in official emails. About the barista at the cafe near her place who always spells her name, Zahara, even though it's written clearly on the app. But eventually, as it always does, the conversation curved back to him. To me. I saw your group chat, she said casually, legs curled under her. Congrats again, you crushed it. I smiled tired. Thanks. And that meme he sent, she started, then stopped. I wasn't gonna say anything, but seriously. I exhaled sharply. Yeah, that was embarrassing. She swirled her wine slowly, staring into the glass like it held better answers than I did. Then she looked up. Can I ask something without you getting mad? I nodded, braced. What if he's jealous? I blinked, jealous. She nodded, expression unreadable. I mean, you're leveling up, big time. New job, new title, bigger salary. He's kind of been standing still, right? It stung, not because it was unfair, but because it was true. I thought about the way he'd brushed off my late nights prepping for interviews. The way he changed the subject when I started talking about Seattle. The way he hadn't even flinched when I got the offer. He didn't meet my excitement. He didn't challenge it either. He just sidestepped it. That doesn't make sense, I said too quickly. I mean, we're supposed to root for each other. That's what relationships are for. Supposed to, she echoed softly. The room felt still again, but this time not peaceful. There was tension sitting between us now, like a third glass of wine neither of us had poured. I stared at her, hoping she'd say it was just a passing theory, that she didn't mean it. But she held my gaze steady. He's not your competition, she said, but I don't think he knows how to be your teammate. I looked away, heart thudding in my chest like it wanted to escape the conversation. We'd had difficult talks before, Zara and I, but this one felt different. Because I had been clinging to the idea that he was distracted, not threatened. That he was careless, not insecure. But maybe it wasn't just forgetfulness. Maybe it was resentment, too quiet to name, but heavy enough to sink us. He's always said he's proud of me, I whispered. Zara gave me a look that wasn't cruel, just honest. Saying it and showing it aren't the same. I nodded slowly, because I knew that. I'd felt it. In the way he didn't come with me to the networking mixer because those things aren't his scene. In how he didn't ask how the salary negotiation went, but made a joke about me being the sugar mama now. In how, when I told him about Seattle, he said, sounds cold instead of, I'm proud of you. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? I asked quietly. Because you weren't ready to hear it, she replied. And because I wanted to believe it could still work out. And now, Zara didn't answer right away. She just reached over and squeezed my hand. Now, I think you're starting to see what the rest of us have been seeing for a while. I looked at our hands, hers warm, mine slightly trembling. It wasn't just the wine. It was the realization that someone else had put words to what I'd been avoiding. That it wasn't all in my head. That maybe, just maybe, I wasn't asking for too much. I was just asking the wrong person. I leaned back against the couch cushion, the ceiling spinning slightly from too many thoughts and not enough denial. He doesn't make me feel big, I said suddenly. Zara tilted her head. What do you mean? I mean, I swallowed hard. I work so hard, I push, I prepare. I go above and beyond for everything I want. And with him, I feel like I have to tuck all that in, like I have to shrink to fit the space he's comfortable in. Zara didn't say anything for a moment. Then she clinked her glass against mine, to never shrinking again. I nodded, eyes stinging, to growing without permission. The final interview had been on a Thursday. 1 hour, 4 panelists, and 3 cups of coffee deep into the day, but I nailed it. I knew it the second I logged off the call. The VP had smiled at the end and said, We're excited about your energy. My energy, not my resume, not just my experience, me. I sat there for a full minute after the Zoom window closed, just staring at the screen, frozen with disbelief. Then I laughed. Like full-on, hand-over-mouth, don't wake the neighbors laughter. I stood up, walked into the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror and whispered, "You did it." It was the first time I'd said that out loud in months, and for once it didn't feel arrogant. It felt earned. I texted Zara first, then Mira. Then my mom, all of them replied within minutes. Zara with 10 emojis and a voice note screaming, Mira with a proud of you, finally. My mom just sent, God is good, come over this weekend. I'll make jollof. I smiled at each message, rereading them like they were proof I hadn't imagined the win. And then, almost out of instinct, I texted him, me. They made the offer. I got it. I waited, 5 minutes passed, then 10. I checked my phone again, still nothing. I told myself he was probably in a meeting. But an hour later, when he finally replied, all he sent was him, oh, that was today. And that right there was the drop. Like falling off a cliff you didn't even realize you were standing on. I stared at the message for a full minute, hoping the bubble would appear again. Maybe he was still typing. Maybe that wasn't the end. But the typing bubble never came. Just seen. I didn't respond, because I didn't know how to shrink the size of that disappointment into something polite, something digestible, something that wouldn't start a fight I wasn't ready to have. I set the phone down on my desk and looked out the window. There was sun outside, bright, clear sky, the kind of afternoon where everything should feel wide open and hopeful. But it didn't. Because what's the point of climbing the mountain if the person you love doesn't even look up long enough to see that you made it? I had wanted him to say so many things. I knew you would. I'm so proud of you. You deserve this. Let's celebrate. Anything. Something, but instead I got, oh, that was today. It wasn't even cruel, it was careless, which sometimes feels worse. Because it wasn't that he wanted to hurt me, it's that I just didn't register as something worth remembering. That realization sunk into my chest like lead. I thought about all the pep talks I gave myself before interviews, the ones I wish he had given me. How I'd stood in the shower mentally rehearsing how to explain my accomplishments without sounding too ambitious. A fear I didn't fully realize had come from dating someone who seemed threatened by my growth. He never said it outright, but he joked a lot. Like when I told him I might be earning more than him with this new job, and he said, "Guess I better marry rich, huh?" with a half smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Or the time he called my late-night prep overkill. Or how he never asked what the new job actually involved. It wasn't just forgetfulness. It was erasure. Tiny moments where he chose not to see me, until eventually I started wondering if I was really there at all. That afternoon, I didn't cry. I didn't even scream. I just stared at my phone, then closed the laptop, and lay on my bed staring at the ceiling. The light coming through the blinds made little lines across the ceiling, soft, golden stripes across a blank canvas. And in that quiet, I let the truth settle in. He was the first person I wanted to share my good news with, and the last person who deserved it. The group chat had been quiet all morning, until Zara broke it open with a screenshot of my offer letter. She asked first, of course, "Zara, can I brag for a sec or no?" Me, fine, go ahead. Zara, everybody look at this queen. Then she dropped it, the screenshot, my name at the top. The title, the salary. The Seattle HQ logo. Cue the celebration. Ronnie, OMGGG shut UP. Is this real? Digi, you better buy all of us drinks immediately. Aisha, I'm screaming. Don't talk to me unless you've been headhunted. The emojis poured in after that fire. Clapping hands, champagne bottles, crowns. I felt myself grinning at the screen, heart finally catching up to the pride I'd been afraid to feel alone. It felt like someone had lifted the air pressure from around me. Then, just as the excitement reached its peak, he replied. Him. Face with rolling eyes, y'all acting like she cured cancer. I read it once, then again. The words didn't even sting at first, they confused me. Like surely I had misread the tone. But I hadn't, it was sarcasm, dismissive, so him. The chat went silent. No one reacted, not even Zara, which was saying something. She had a gift for savage clapbacks, but I knew what her silence meant. She was letting me take the lead. Letting me decide whether to laugh it off or finally stop pretending. And for a second, I considered doing what I always did, smoothing it over, playing it cool, acting like he was just being funny. But I didn't, because I felt something different this time. Not anger, embarrassment. That kind of quiet, creeping shame that wraps around your spine when someone publicly reminds you that they don't value what matters to you, and now everyone can see it. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about what everyone else saw, too. I imagined them staring at their phones, rereading his message, wondering why I was still with him. I imagined Mira sighing, Zara shaking her head, Aisha arching an eyebrow, and I hated that, not because they were judging me, but because they weren't wrong. I waited for him to follow it up with a JK or a laughing emoji or even a "you know I'm proud of you." But nothing came, just the one-line punch. And suddenly, all the air in the chat had been sucked out. I stared at the screen for a long time, willing myself not to type something impulsive, not to defend him, not to explain away something that didn't deserve an excuse. Instead, I exited the app and tossed my phone onto the couch. I felt like I was shrinking again, like I'd climbed all the way up to this moment just to be pushed back down, not by a stranger, not by someone who doubted me, but by the person who was supposed to be my biggest cheerleader. It wasn't even what he said. It was what he didn't. He didn't say congratulations. He didn't ask how it happened. He didn't even pretend to be happy for me. And worse, he mocked it. In front of people who were happy for me. In front of people who knew what this job meant. In front of friends who had been by my side when I almost quit during the second round, when I doubted if I was even qualified. The doorbell rang. It was Zara, standing there with 2 lattes and that face, the one she only wore when she knew I needed backup but wasn't going to ask for it. "I figured you'd be spiraling," she said, stepping inside. "So I brought caffeine and judgment." I let out a weak laugh. We didn't even sit down. Just leaned against opposite sides of the kitchen counter, both sipping through straws like we were bracing ourselves for something bigger. She didn't bring it up right away. She waited. Let me make the first move. Finally, I said, he didn't even try to make it a joke. "No," she said, "he didn't." And now everyone in the chat knows. She nodded slowly. "They do." I took another sip. My hand trembled a little. "I don't think I can keep doing this," I admitted. She raised an eyebrow. This, I repeated. The explaining, the pretending he's just bad at expressing himself. The constant reaching, the shrinking. Zara didn't look smug or satisfied. She looked relieved. "Good," she said, "because I've been waiting for you to say that since the last 3 times he made you feel small." I didn't answer. Didn't need to, because the silence after that felt different. It wasn't empty. It was clear. I wasn't spiraling, I was surfacing. I didn't tell my mom what happened in the group chat. She's not the kind of woman who understands sarcasm as a weapon or passive aggression. She grew up in a world where love was measured in actions, meals cooked, backs rubbed, lights left on when someone came home late. But even without telling her, she sensed it. Mothers always do. She called 2 nights after the group chat incident. I had just finished folding laundry and was halfway through an episode of something I wasn't watching when her name lit up my screen. I answered, tried to sound upbeat. "Hey, Mama." She didn't say hello, not at first. Her voice was soft, careful. "Are you okay?" And just like that, I felt my throat tighten. "I'm fine," I said too fast. She let it hang there for a second. Then, "I was talking to Auntie Lami. She said you got a new job." I smiled at that. "Yeah, I did." "You didn't tell me." "I wanted to surprise you," I said, and it wasn't a lie. I had imagined it, me showing up with a cake or something silly, the offer letter printed and framed just for the drama. But when the silence hit and the celebration soured, I shelved the idea like an outfit that didn't fit anymore. "Well," she said, "I'm proud of you." The words came so easily from her, it hurt a little. "Thanks, Mama." There was another pause, then came the real reason she called. "So, what's the plan now?" I frowned. "The plan? You're doing well at work, mashallah. But are you planning to settle down anytime soon?" There it was, the question that always shows up uninvited. I leaned back on the couch, stared at the ceiling, and sighed. "Is this really the time?" "I'm not pressuring you," she said gently. I want you to have someone beside you. You work so hard. It would be nice to see someone work hard for you too." The lump in my throat grew heavier. I swallowed it. I don't know, I replied. Things are complicated. With him, yes. My mom didn't ask for details. She never does. She's the type who believes that if something is too painful to say, the silence says enough. Marriage is hard, she said after a moment. Even with love, even with effort, but it starts with respect. It starts with showing up for each other. I closed my eyes, let her words wash over me. I waited for him to show up, I said softly, not even sure she could hear me. She was quiet for a long time. Then, and did he? I didn't answer because she already knew. Sweetheart, she continued, her voice the softest it had been all night. Sometimes what we think is love is just habit or hope, and that's okay. But don't confuse it for partnership. I let out a shaky breath. I don't want to disappoint you, I whispered. Oh, Habibti, she said, you never could. That almost broke me, because there it was again, love that didn't ask me to perform. That didn't need to be earned. That didn't forget to show up on the days that mattered. I wiped my eyes with the sleeve of my sweatshirt. You raised me too well, I said with a weak laugh. She chuckled softly. Maybe. But I also raised you to know when to leave a table that doesn't feed you. We talked a little more after that. About the job, about the food she made that day, about nothing important. When we hung up, I sat on the couch staring at the wall, thinking about the difference between love that lifts you and love that weighs you down. My mom had never met my boyfriend. He always said he was too busy whenever I asked him to come to dinner, and I used to defend him for that. Now I wondered why I'd ever thought he was worth defending. It started with a simple notification. Evan F. sent you a message. I hadn't thought about Evan in years, honestly. We were friends in college, nothing romantic, just the kind of quiet bond that forms in long library nights and group projects no one wants to lead. He was kind, awkward, always scribbling things in the margins of his notebooks. We drifted apart like most people do, so when I saw his name pop up, I hesitated. I clicked it open expecting something benign. A congrats on the new job? Or maybe even a link to some alumni group I'd forgotten to mute. Instead, I read, I don't know if I should say this, but I saw your job news through Zara. And I always thought you deserved better than him. I read it twice, then a third time. My thumb hovered over the screen like that might help me figure out how to breathe through the heat blooming in my chest. Not anger, not confusion, recognition, because it wasn't the first time I'd heard those words. But it was the first time someone had said them without pity, without scolding, without waiting for me to respond. Just truth. I locked my phone and set it face down on the nightstand. Sat there in the dark, heart pounding like someone had thrown open a door I wasn't ready to walk through. What did Evan mean? What had he seen? What was it about my relationship that was visible to people who weren't even in my life anymore? The room was quiet, save for the hum of the fridge in the kitchen and the occasional passing car outside. I thought about replying, just to say thank you or to deflect, to joke, to pretend I hadn't spent the last week peeling myself out of a love that had stopped fitting months ago. Instead, I did nothing, because something about the message scared me. Not because he was wrong, because he was right. Because someone who hadn't seen me in years still recognized that I'd been dimming myself around the wrong person. And if he could see it from the outside, what did that say about me? I stared at the ceiling, replaying old moments with new clarity. I remembered the time Evan and I had worked on a group presentation, and I'd stayed up late to make the slide deck beautiful. Not just functional, but beautiful. He told me, you always bring something extra to things. You make everything feel like it matters. I laughed then, brushed it off, said something about being type A. But now I saw the truth in that. I do make things matter, I care hard. I pour myself into people and projects and possibilities. And lately, I'd been pouring into someone who didn't even notice, who forgot, who belittled, who shrugged every time I reached out. I picked up my phone again, opened Evan's message, read it one more time. You always deserved better than him. It wasn't a flirtation. It wasn't a move. It was a mirror. And in it, I saw a version of myself I'd been burying under excuses. I didn't reply that night, not because I didn't want to, but because for once I needed to sit with the truth before dressing it up with words. I opened the form just to look. That's what I told myself. It was midnight. The kind of midnight where everything is too quiet, and you can hear your thoughts move through you like wind through old windows. I was curled up on my bed in an oversized hoodie, laptop propped on my knees, cursor blinking on the HR portal like it knew something I didn't. The internal transfer application. It had always been there, one of those links I clicked accidentally while checking my benefits or updating my emergency contacts. But this time, I hovered over it on purpose. Seattle, there it was. It wasn't a guarantee, just an option. But I clicked it anyway. And when the form opened, I didn't close it. Instead, I stared at the fields like they were waiting for a version of me I hadn't fully met yet. Reason for transfer? I hesitated. There was no checkbox for because I'm slowly drowning in a relationship that's killing the joy I used to feel about this job, and I need air. So I typed, professional growth opportunity. Desire to work directly with the strategy and innovation team. Clean, crisp, believable. I moved through the rest of the form quickly. My fingers knew what to do, even if my heart hadn't caught up. When I reached the last page, submit, I stared at it for a long time, not because I wasn't sure, but because I realized this was the first real decision I'd made for myself in months, maybe years. Every move before this had included him. What apartment worked for his commute? What dinner he'd prefer? Whether I should accept the late meeting or come home early to make sure we had time together. I bent myself into shapes he never even asked for, because that's what love looked like to me. Compromise, sacrifice, proving. But now, as I stared at that little blue button, I felt something else rising in me. Not revenge. Not anger, hope. A quiet, unfamiliar kind of hope. The kind that whispered, you don't have to stay where you're slowly disappearing. I clicked submit. And just like that, it was done. No fireworks, no dramatic music. Just a soft confirmation on the screen. Your request has been submitted for review. I closed my laptop and let it sit on the bed beside me. My chest felt tight, but not in a bad way. Like the kind of tightness you get before a big leap. Before your stomach drops and your hands grip something new. I didn't tell anyone, not Zara, not Mira, not even my mom. Definitely not him. This was mine, my decision. My step, my exit, or entrance, depending on how you looked at it. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was running away. I felt like I was running towards something. Maybe a city. Maybe a version of myself I hadn't met yet. But either way, I was finally moving. It was a Friday night, and we were supposed to be planning her housewarming, picking snacks, arguing over playlists, and pretending we didn't both want to cancel and just eat takeout on the couch. I had my laptop open on her kitchen island. She was behind me, digging through her cabinets for the wine opener when I clicked into my calendar to double-check a date for the team. That's when she saw it. Wait, she said, pausing mid-search. Seattle. I froze. For a second, I thought about pretending she read it wrong. That it was a meeting title or a webinar or something else not life-altering. But I couldn't lie to Zara. She knows me too well. I turned slightly in my chair. It's nothing, just something I submitted last week, a transfer. She blinked, a transfer. To Seattle, I added, voice lower now. Her eyes widened then narrowed. You didn't tell me. I was going to, I said quickly. I just wasn't ready. Not ready or afraid I'd talk you out of it. That one hit harder than I wanted it to. I shut the laptop gently and swiveled to face her fully. Maybe both. She sat down across from me, arms folded, not angry, just locked in. So what, you're leaving and I find out because I happened to glance over your shoulder? No. I mean, yes, but not like that. Then how? I ran my hand through my hair, suddenly hyper-aware of how small the room felt. I haven't told anyone, not even my mom. Zara's voice softened. Why? I stared at the wine bottle between us. Because I needed something that was just mine. Something I didn't have to explain or justify or defend. She was quiet for a long moment. Then finally, are you running away? I looked up sharply. No. Are you sure? I exhaled. I'm running towards something. I don't know exactly what yet, but it's not here. Not this version of my life. Not this version of me. She nodded slowly. Okay, she said, but don't you dare disappear without saying goodbye. I smiled, relief and guilt tangling in my chest. I wasn't going to. I just needed time to believe I was actually doing it. Zara reached out and touched my hand. "You can do brave things quietly," she said, "but I'm still allowed to panic a little." We both laughed, and in that moment, I realized I wasn't just holding a secret, I was holding a new beginning. One that scared me. One that still made me feel like I might throw up every time I thought about what I was leaving behind. But one that was mine. Seattle wasn't just a city anymore, it was an answer. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the question. The irony wasn't lost on me. He remembered every detail of his birthday. From the venue to the cake flavor to the playlist, every single thing had a bullet point in his notes app and a backup plan in case something fell through. He called it curating a vibe. I called it obsessing over a party he wanted more than a future. "You're going to help me put the whole thing together, right?" he asked, eyes bright as he held his phone up, showing me a color-coded list. I nodded, sure. It came out flat, too flat, but he didn't notice. He was too busy talking about how he wanted everyone in coordinated tones, earthy neutrals, and how cool it would be to rent that rooftop space his coworker mentioned. He was alive in a way I hadn't seen in months, and I was fading. Every time he said my birthday, it felt like a mirror being held up to what he could give his energy to and what he couldn't. I tried to match his tone, his excitement. I smiled in the right places, laughed when he made a joke about how last year's party was just a warm-up. But inside, I was somewhere else. Somewhere quiet, somewhere deliberate. I thought about Seattle, the application, the confirmation email, the follow-up from HR saying final approvals would be issued next week. He didn't know I was waiting on a different kind of yes. Not from him, from myself. His birthday planning took over everything. Our conversations, his weekends, his social media stories. He added a countdown widget to his phone screen. He said things like, "It's gonna be the night of the year." And I kept thinking, it might be the end of ours. The night before his party, Zara and I met for a quick coffee. I didn't say much. She could tell something was off. "He doesn't know," she asked. I shook my head. "He hasn't even asked how things are going with work." Zara rolled her eyes. "Of course not. Why ask questions when you can throw yourself a party?" I smiled at that, but it didn't reach. The truth was, I didn't even want him to ask anymore, because I didn't know how to answer without saying everything I was afraid to say. That I was already halfway out the door. That I had made peace with going. That I didn't want to plan his future when he couldn't even be present for my present. When I got home that evening, he was arranging candles for lighting aesthetics. He asked if I could order a charcuterie board from that place downtown. Then he kissed my cheek and called me his event manager. I stared at him for a long time, and I wondered how two people could exist in the same space, one planning a celebration, the other rehearsing a goodbye. He danced to his playlist while I sliced lemons for drinks. He was so proud of how the night was coming together. And all I could think was, you remembered every detail of this party, but you forgot the day I needed you most. I didn't say it. Not yet, because the party was tomorrow. And part of me wanted to see what would happen when someone so consumed by his own reflection finally noticed the space beside him had gone quiet. The irony wasn't lost on me. He remembered every detail of his birthday. From the venue to the cake flavor to the playlist, every single thing had a bullet point in his notes app and a backup plan in case something fell through. He called it curating a vibe. I called it obsessing over a party he wanted more than a future. "You're going to help me put the whole thing together, right?" he asked, eyes bright as he held his phone up, showing me a color-coded list. I nodded, sure. It came out flat, too flat, but he didn't notice. He was too busy talking about how he wanted everyone in coordinated tones, earthy neutrals, and how cool it would be to rent that rooftop space his coworker mentioned. He was alive in a way I hadn't seen in months, and I was fading. Every time he said my birthday, it felt like a mirror being held up to what he could give his energy to and what he couldn't. I tried to match his tone, his excitement. I smiled in the right places, laughed when he made a joke about how last year's party was just a warm-up. But inside, I was somewhere else. Somewhere quiet, somewhere deliberate. I thought about Seattle, the application, the confirmation email, the follow-up from HR saying final approvals would be issued next week. He didn't know I was waiting on a different kind of yes. Not from him, from myself. His birthday planning took over everything. Our conversations, his weekends, his social media stories. He added a countdown widget to his phone screen. He said things like, "It's gonna be the night of the year." And I kept thinking, it might be the end of ours. The night before his party, Zara and I met for a quick coffee. I didn't say much. She could tell something was off. "He doesn't know," she asked. I shook my head. "He hasn't even asked how things are going with work." Zara rolled her eyes. "Of course not. Why ask questions when you can throw yourself a party?" I smiled at that, but it didn't reach. The truth was, I didn't even want him to ask anymore, because I didn't know how to answer without saying everything I was afraid to say. That I was already halfway out the door. That I had made peace with going. That I didn't want to plan his future when he couldn't even be present for my present. When I got home that evening, he was arranging candles for lighting aesthetics. He asked if I could order a charcuterie board from that place downtown. Then he kissed my cheek and called me his event manager. I stared at him for a long time, and I wondered how two people could exist in the same space, one planning a celebration, the other rehearsing a goodbye. He danced to his playlist while I sliced lemons for drinks. He was so proud of how the night was coming together. And all I could think was, you remembered every detail of this party, but you forgot the day I needed you most. I didn't say it. Not yet, because the party was tomorrow. And part of me wanted to see what would happen when someone so consumed by his own reflection finally noticed the space beside him had gone quiet. The night of the party, I wore the dress he once told me was effortless, but hot. That was before compliments became scarce and effort became one-sided. I wore it anyway, not for him, but because it made me feel grounded. Present. The apartment looked exactly how he wanted it to: moody lights, candles flickering along the ledges, muted browns and golds everywhere. He greeted guests with hugs and jokes, paraded around like a man who had everything figured out. I smiled where I needed to, topped off drinks, laughed on cue, but underneath I was counting the hours. 2 days earlier, I had gotten the confirmation. The Seattle transfer had been approved. An official start date, a relocation contact, a note from my new team lead welcoming me aboard. I hadn't told him. I wanted to. I almost did, but something kept stopping me. Maybe I wanted him to ask first. Maybe I was still hoping he'd finally notice I wasn't all the way here anymore. The music thumped low in the background, his custom playlist. A blend of throwback R&B and party remixes he swore gave the room soul. Then someone made a song request. "No offense," Zara said to him, smirking, "but your playlist's a little too curated." He laughed, then turned to me. "Babe, pull up your music. Let's give the people what they want." I hesitated. My phone was across the room on the bar cart. I had left it charging after answering HR's welcome email earlier that afternoon. Before I could protest, he was already moving. He grabbed it, tapped the screen, and unlocked it without asking. He knew my passcode. He always had. I turned toward him just as he paused. His thumb hovered over the email app. The screen was open, my inbox still showing the top message. Subject: Seattle Transfer Official Welcome. His expression changed in a way that was almost imperceptible, just a flicker in the corners of his mouth, a shift in the way he stood. He looked up at me across the room. Music still played, people still talked, but everything between us dropped into silence. He walked back slowly, holding the phone like it had burned him. He didn't pass it to me, just held it at his side. "When were you gonna tell me?" he asked, quiet but pointed. Heads turned, not all, but enough. Zara froze mid-sip. Digi, who'd been talking near us, went still. I felt the heat crawl up my neck. "This isn't the time," I said, voice low. "Right," he snapped. "Because you were gonna slip it in between wine refills." Someone turned the music down, not off, just enough to make the tension louder. He took a step closer. "Seattle," he said, like the word tasted bitter. "That's what you've been hiding." I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out, because I hadn't prepared for this. Not here, not like this. All I knew was that I was suddenly standing in the middle of a party I didn't want to be at, with a man who'd never asked how my day was, and now suddenly wanted to know everything. "You were just gonna leave?" he asked, louder now. "Is that how this ends?" I glanced around the room. Eyes darted away. The buzz of the night collapsed into something colder. I wasn't ready to talk about it, I said, forcing calm into my voice. Because I wasn't sure I owed you that anymore. He blinked like I'd slapped him. For a second, he didn't say anything. Then he laughed, a low, sharp sound. Wow, he said. You got the job and decided I didn't deserve a heads up. I swallowed hard. You didn't even remember the interview. He started to speak again, but I wasn't done. You didn't ask, not once. I waited all day and you forgot. And I still didn't leave. But the second you feel like something isn't about you anymore, suddenly you care. He stared at me. Something in his posture wilted, but his pride held him upright. No one moved. And in that stillness, I realized this wasn't a scene I was making. It was a truth I'd been living. And now it was out in the open, with the music playing too softly in the background and the party lights flickering over the fallout. The silence after my last sentence stretched far too long. He looked like he wanted to argue. His mouth opened, then closed again, as if all the responses he might have thrown back got caught somewhere between his ego and the truth. Around us, the party had shifted. The music still played, low and steady, but the air had changed. The laughter was gone. Conversations had stalled into murmurs. And even though no one said anything, everyone was listening. He stepped back, finally handing me my phone like it was a weapon he didn't know how to carry. I took it slowly, slid it into my back pocket. I didn't mean for you to find out like this, I said quietly. But you were never asking the right questions. That's when he snapped. I didn't ask because I was busy trying to hold everything else together, he said, voice raised now. You think I'm just out here forgetting you on purpose. You think I don't care. His tone echoed off the walls, sharp and rattling. A few people took subtle steps back. Zara's eyes met mine from across the room. She didn't move toward me. She didn't have to. She was already in my corner. I could feel it. I think, I said slowly, evenly, you stopped showing up, long before I started packing. He scoffed. This is your way out then, huh? A transfer and a disappearing act. Real mature. Don't talk to her like that. The voice didn't come from me. It came from Layla, his friend, the one who'd known him since college. She was leaning against the kitchen counter with a half-filled wine glass, but now she stood tall, her voice cutting through the tension like a clean break. Everyone turned, he blinked, thrown off. Excuse me. Layla stepped forward, her tone calm but sharp. Why are you yelling? You forgot her big day. You forgot the most important moment she's had in years. I didn't forget. You dismissed it, she snapped. You made it a joke, and we all saw it. He glanced around now, as if realizing just how many people were watching. He wasn't just arguing with me anymore. He was unraveling in front of everyone who thought they knew him. In front of the crowd he'd curated for his big night. Zara walked over to me slowly, rested a hand on my back. It was grounding, like a reminder that I wasn't alone. Not in this room, not in this moment. You always make yourself the victim, I said softly, just to him. Even when it's you doing the damage. His eyes darkened, but he didn't speak. Maybe because he had no comeback left that wouldn't sound like an excuse. Maybe because part of him, even if he wouldn't admit it, knew. I took a deep breath and looked around the room, the candles, the wine glasses, the friends whose faces were frozen somewhere between shock and quiet support. Then I looked back at him. I think I'm done. He didn't move. I turned, heels clicking softly against the hardwood floor. I walked past the drinks table, past the decorations we'd picked out together, past the playlist that was still looping songs I used to love. No one tried to stop me. Not him, not his friends, not even me. Because walking out didn't feel like an ending. It felt like remembering who I was before I made myself small for someone who never saw the full version of me. I made it halfway down the apartment hallway before I heard my name. Not loud, not shouted, just enough for it to catch the back of my spine. Wait, can we talk? I stopped walking, not because I wanted to hear him out, but because I wanted to finally say it. The thing I'd rehearsed in my head more times than I'd admit. The thing I had swallowed over and over every time he made me feel like I was asking for too much. I turned around slowly. He looked wrecked. No longer the confident host. No longer the man who had curated a perfect birthday party to orbit around himself. Just a boy who didn't realize the sun had shifted. He stepped closer. Hands half raised, like he didn't know whether to beg or defend. I know I messed up, he said. I know I've been distant. But this, you just leave, you couldn't talk to me first. I tilted my head, studied him like a stranger might. Do you know what I did the morning of my final interview? I asked, calm, measured. He blinked. What? I stood in the mirror, wearing that white shirt you said made me look like I ran a company. I had my notes. I had 3 backup talking points, and I was scared. He opened his mouth, but I kept going. I was scared, and all I needed was one message, just one. Good luck, you've got this. That's all. He looked away. I told you I was busy. No, I said, voice sharper now. You weren't busy, you were silent, and I waited, all day. I refreshed my phone like it was going to change something. He looked up again, eyes soft. I forgot. I nodded slowly. Yeah, and I remembered everything. His brows pulled together. I remembered your presentation day, your uncle's surgery, your coworker's baby shower. I remembered what time your soccer games started, and when you liked your coffee warm and when you hated talking. He didn't interrupt this time. I took a step forward. I remembered you over and over. And you couldn't even remember the one thing I've worked toward for months. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did, I said. And you kept doing it, not with fists, not with words, but with silence. With the way you made everything small, unless it had your name on it. He looked down, and I suddenly realized how much I didn't need him to look up. Because this wasn't about being seen by him anymore. It was about seeing myself. The truth is, I said, softer now, I stopped wanting to be here a long time ago. I was just waiting to see if you'd notice, if you'd ask, if you'd reach across the space growing between us and say, what's wrong? He looked up, and for once I saw it, the mirror, the realization, the grief of someone who thought they still had time. I thought we were okay, he whispered. I know you did, I said, because I made it easy to believe that. I covered for you. I forgave early. I smiled when I was sad. I lowered the bar so you wouldn't trip. He took a breath like he wanted to say something else, but I was done. I didn't need to hear his next excuse, or apology, or plea. I turned again and walked away. And this time, he didn't follow. Because there's a difference between loving someone who's lost and carrying someone who never tried to find you. I had just turned the corner toward the elevator when I heard him behind me again. This time, not my name, but my story. No one even knew she was thinking about leaving, he said, loud enough for whoever was left in the living room to hear. I mean, come on. If I'd done that to her, I'd be the villain, right? I stopped walking, not because I wanted to go back, but because I was tired of him controlling the narrative, even as it unraveled in front of everyone. I turned slowly and leaned against the wall just before the elevator, arms crossed, heartbeat steady. The apartment was still buzzing with guests who had tried to act like the party wasn't derailed, but you could feel it. The music no longer filled the space. The laughter had faded to a hush. People sipped their drinks quietly now, glancing toward the drama they couldn't quite look away from. And then Layla stepped forward. Again, her voice calm, firm, not raised but somehow still louder than his. You are the villain, actually. The room stilled. He turned to her, eyes wide. What? Layla stepped closer, arms at her side. You forgot the most important day of her career. You mocked her, in front of all of us. And now you're mad that she's moving forward without you. She didn't say anything. She tried, Layla said. You just never listened. I could see it in his posture, the way he recoiled, shocked that someone from his circle had switched sides. Zara stepped into view too, standing at the other end of the kitchen. She gave you so many chances, she said. You just called it nagging or being dramatic. But she was asking, begging for you to show up. You just thought she'd always wait. He laughed once, short and bitter. Wow, so now I'm the bad guy. Zara raised her brow, if the shoe fits. He looked around as if someone might come to his defense. No one did. Even Deji, who was usually glued to his side at any social gathering, stared at the floor like the tiles were more important than the truth hanging in the room. He looked back at me then, but I had nothing left to say, not to him. Zara crossed the room and slipped beside me, her presence a shield without walls. You ready? She asked softly. I nodded. As we turned to leave, I caught one last look at him, standing alone in a room he had filled with people, now suddenly realizing that performance isn't the same as partnership. That throwing a party doesn't make you generous. That being loud doesn't make you right. And that sometimes, the person who walked away isn't being dramatic, they're just done. As we stepped into the elevator, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. The elevator doors closed with a soft hiss. Zara stood beside me silent. She didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't ask, "Are you okay?" She just let the quiet hold space for the kind of grief you don't name out loud. We rode down in silence, the only sound the soft whir of the elevator cables and the muted thud of my heartbeat in my ears. When the doors opened, the lobby felt too bright. I stepped out first, heels echoing sharply against the polished floor. Each step a punctuation mark, each step its own answer. I wasn't storming out like a woman in a movie. I wasn't crying. I wasn't yelling. I was simply done. And there's a kind of power in that, when you're not trying to be heard anymore. When you're no longer trying to win someone back. When you finally understand that leaving quietly doesn't mean you're weak, it means you're finished. Outside, the air was cool and still. A gentle breeze swept past, brushing strands of hair across my face. I didn't fix them. Zara pulled out her phone to call a ride. I stood beside her, hands in the pockets of my coat, watching the street like it might offer me something more solid than what I just walked away from. "I almost stayed," I said. It slipped out before I could stop it. Zara looked over at me. I almost stayed when he grabbed my phone, when he looked at me across the room, when he said my name like it still meant something. She didn't interrupt. Do you know how many versions of myself I had to betray to keep that relationship going? Zara exhaled, too many. I nodded. The ride pulled up a few minutes later, headlights washing over us in soft beams. We got in. I didn't look back, not at the building, not at the windows, not at the floor where I had almost let my whole future dissolve under the weight of someone else's comfort. I looked ahead. As we drove, I leaned my head against the window, watching the world blur past. The trees, the streetlights, the still-awake diners and late-night dog walkers, everyone moving in their own orbit, their own lives. And me. I had just stepped out of one that no longer fit. It didn't feel final yet, but it felt right. And that was enough. Zara didn't ask if I wanted to come over. She just told the driver her address instead of mine. We both knew I wasn't going home tonight. I didn't say it out loud, but I think she sensed that if I went back to that apartment, his apartment, I might hesitate. I might sit on the edge of the bed we shared and second-guess myself. I might fall back into the same cycle of silence and smallness and calling it love. She wasn't going to let that happen. Her apartment smelled like lemon and linen. Clean, lived in, safe. She handed me a hoodie before I even took off my shoes. The same one I always borrowed when we watched movies. The same one I cried into after my first breakup. The one that smelled like detergent and memories. I slipped it on and sat on the kitchen floor, my back against the cabinets. Zara joined me with a box of leftover pizza and 2 bottles of sparkling water she popped open like champagne. We clinked them together with no words. Just a quiet kind of ceremony between women who know what it means to be exhausted from pretending everything is fine. We ate cold pizza in silence for a minute. Then she said, without looking at me, "I'm proud of you." The words were simple, but they landed hard, because I hadn't heard them, not in a real way, from someone I loved in a long time. I swallowed the lump in my throat, took a deep breath. I wanted him to be proud of me, I admitted. Not because I need validation, but because I needed to feel like I wasn't doing all of this alone. Zara nodded. "I get it. I waited all day for that stupid good luck text," I said. I sat in my car gripping my phone like it owed me something. And when the offer came through, I thought maybe now he'll see me. "But he didn't," she said gently. I shook my head. "He said, 'Oh, that was today?'" I whispered. Zara winced like she'd heard it for the first time. "I laughed it off," I continued. "I always laugh it off. I make excuses. I translate his apathy into tiredness or forgetfulness, or that's just how he is." But deep down, I kept hoping he'd change. That one day, he'd just wake up and see me fully again. Like he did in the beginning. Zara stayed quiet. She knew I wasn't done. I leaned my head back against the cabinet. I think the worst part is he didn't even treat me badly. Not really. He just stopped treating me like I mattered. "That is treating you badly," Zara said. "He made you question your worth. He made you beg for scraps of attention. That's not kindness. That's neglect." I looked over at her. There were tears in my eyes now, but I didn't wipe them. I don't know what I'm doing, I said, voice cracking. Seattle is huge, I'm scared. What if I get there and hate it? What if I miss him? What if? Zara reached over and took my hand. You're allowed to be scared. You're even allowed to miss him. But you are not allowed to go back to a life that made you feel invisible. I let out a shaky breath. And then I said something I hadn't said out loud before, not to her, not to myself. I think he stopped loving me a long time ago, and I just didn't want to be the one who noticed. The silence that followed wasn't heavy, it was healing. Zara squeezed my hand. I'm here, she said. You're not doing any of this alone. We sat there on the kitchen floor until the pizza box was empty and the tears had dried. And in that small, messy, quiet moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Safe. Not because of a man, not because of a relationship, but because of friendship, because of honesty, because of finally telling the truth and having someone stay to hold it with me. We'd fallen asleep on the floor. The kind of sleep that comes not from exhaustion, but from emotional depletion, when your body finally lets go because it can't carry the weight of everything anymore. I woke up at 6:12 a.m., Zara's hoodie bunched around my neck, my phone buzzing quietly from the kitchen counter. One notification. It was him. A text long enough to fill the screen and require scrolling. No subject line. No warning, just his name, just the weight of his words. I'm still trying to figure out what happened. You blindsided me. That's not fair. If I'd known how you were feeling, I would have done more. You shutting down like that at my birthday. It felt cruel. I know I'm not perfect, but I've always been here. I've supported you in my own way. This feels like a punishment for something I didn't even know I did wrong. I sat there on Zara's couch, phone in hand, heart steady in a way that surprised me. A week ago, those words would have broken me. Now they just confirmed what I'd been learning, piece by painful piece. He still didn't get it. He saw my silence as cruelty. He saw my leaving as betrayal. He saw himself as the victim of a decision I made after months of being invisible. I didn't reply. Not right away. Instead, I reread the message slowly, line by line. You blindsided me. No, I unraveled in plain sight. You just refused to look. That's not fair. What wasn't fair was you forgetting the biggest day of my life and expecting me to still plan yours. I've supported you in my own way. Silence is not support. Dismissiveness is not love. A meme in the group chat is not celebration. I didn't block him, not yet. I wanted him to see that I'd read it. I wanted the read at 6:14 a.m. to echo as loud as his silence once did. Zara stirred beside me, rubbing her eyes. Everything okay? I nodded because it was. For the first time, it actually was. I put the phone down without replying, got up, poured a glass of water, let the coolness run through me like clarity. He finally sent the message I'd been waiting for. But I wasn't the girl waiting anymore. Later that afternoon, Mira called. She never called in the middle of the day unless something was wrong or unless she'd been thinking about something too long to keep it in. I stepped out onto Zara's balcony, wrapping the hoodie tighter around myself. Hey. She didn't start with pleasantries. I heard you walked out of his party. I paused, news travels. You okay? I think so, I said. She exhaled, the kind of breath that carries more than words. Then, softly, she added, Can I tell you something I've never told anyone? I blinked, of course. She paused again, like she was choosing each word carefully. 3 months before my wedding, I called it off. I leaned against the railing, heart stilling. What? Yeah, she said. I told everyone we postponed because of his work, but the truth is, I knew I couldn't marry him. I was silent, waiting. I was doing everything, she continued. Handling logistics, buying into his dreams, pretending his coldness was stress. And one night, I just sat there and realized this is how it'll always feel. Me trying. Him tolerating. I swallowed hard. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to think I was weak, she said. And because I thought maybe I was the problem. Maybe I just didn't know how to love right. I closed my eyes. But watching you lately, she added, I realized we were never the problem. We just stayed too long trying to be enough for men who didn't meet us halfway. Tears pricked my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I wish you'd told me, I whispered. I'm telling you now, she said, because I see you trying to walk away with grace. And I want you to know you're not alone. You come from a line of women who have left when they needed to. That line wrapped around me like armor. It didn't fix everything, but it reminded me that walking away wasn't weakness. It was legacy. It was strength, passed down in whispers and quiet decisions behind closed doors. "I'm proud of you," she said before hanging up. "I hope you're proud of you too." I was, slowly, finally, I was. Then a call came just after sunset. I didn't recognize the number at first, but something about the area code made my stomach turn. I stepped away from Zara's kitchen to answer it, already uneasy. "Hello." A familiar voice, soft and measured. "Hi, sweetheart, it's me, his mom." My throat tightened. We hadn't spoken in months. Not since the last time I came over for dinner and sat awkwardly while she showed me photos of his childhood. Still calling him her little gentleman, even as he ghosted me for a weekend trip with friends. Hi, I said cautiously. "I just heard what happened," she said. "He's devastated." I said nothing. "He told me you're moving, that you didn't tell him, that you embarrassed him." Her words were gentle, but they carried the same undertone I remembered. Quiet judgment wrapped in sweetness. "I didn't mean for it to be public," I said. "But it was never just about Seattle." There was a pause, then, "He thinks you stopped loving him." I took a breath, let it sit there. Let her hear the silence she didn't expect. "He thinks that because love to him means always being forgiven," I said finally. "It means me lowering myself until he feels tall again." She sighed. "I know he can be careless, but you were such a grounding force for him. I worry what this will do to him." And there it was, the sentence. Not concern for me, not an apology for how he made me feel, worry for him. I could have said 100 things that I'd waited, that I'd asked, that I'd begged in small, invisible ways to be seen, and all I got was a shrug. But I didn't owe her my pain. "I didn't stop loving him," I said quietly. "I just started loving myself more." She didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice was softer. "I hope you find what you're looking for." "I already am," I said, and then I ended the call. Not out of rudeness, but because the part of me that used to crave approval from everyone he loved had finally grown quiet. I didn't need to be understood by the people who never saw the cracks. I only needed to stop hiding them. I didn't write it to send it. I wrote it to let it go. Sitting on Zara's balcony with the city humming below, I opened a blank document and stared at the blinking cursor until the words came, not for him, but for me. "Dear you." I waited, longer than I should have. Through birthdays and quiet nights and missed moments I never told you mattered. I waited for you to see me again. The way you did at the start, when my ambition didn't scare you, when my joy made you smile instead of roll your eyes. I waited on the morning of my interview. I told myself you'd text. I told myself you'd remember. I stared at my phone like it was a person, like it owed me love in your voice. You never sent anything. Not even good luck. When I got the offer, I still tried. I still wanted you to be proud. I still shared it with you before I told my mom. You shrugged. You minimized it with a meme. And somewhere in that silence, something inside me broke, but not in the way you might think. Not from heartbreak. From clarity, I saw myself. Alone, waiting, shrinking to make space for someone who never saw how wide my love really was. You didn't break me, but you did teach me what it feels like to betray myself slowly. You taught me that not all cruelty is loud. Sometimes it's just forgetfulness on repeat. Sometimes it's a maybe later and you're overreacting. And I've got a lot on my plate. Sometimes it's nothing at all. And still, I loved you. I wrote you into every future I imagined. Until one day, I started writing myself back into it too. Now I'm choosing something else. Not because I want to punish you, not because I'm bitter, but because I finally realized love doesn't have to hurt quietly. And I don't have to stay where I feel forgotten. So this is goodbye, not the kind you beg for, not the kind that screams, the kind that's quiet, strong, certain, the kind that leaves space for something better. Me. I closed the laptop, exhaled, and for the first time in what felt like months, I didn't feel the urge to send it. Because I didn't need him to read it to feel like I had said it. I had spoken my truth, and that was enough. The airport was unusually calm for a Monday morning. No rushing, no frantic announcements, just the soft shuffle of luggage wheels and the hum of quiet voices blending with coffee machines. It felt peaceful, and I needed that. My flight to Seattle wasn't for another hour, but I'd arrived early, clutching my boarding pass like it might disappear if I let go. I sat near gate 32, sipping a lukewarm chai latte, mind wandering between goodbye and beginning, when I heard someone say my name. "Hey, wait, is that you?" I turned slowly, blinking in disbelief. Evan, from college, from the message. From the moment weeks ago that cracked open something I hadn't realized was still buried. He looked the same, messy curls, a little scruff, kind eyes. He wore a navy hoodie and carried a worn leather backpack that I recognized from our library all-nighters. He smiled, but with hesitation. "Wow," I said. "Hi." He gestured toward the seat beside me. "Can I?" "Yeah, of course." He sat down, still smiling but unsure. "I wasn't totally certain it was you. You looked different." I raised an eyebrow. "Better or worse?" "Stronger," he said simply. That caught me off guard. I laughed once, soft and unsure. "What are you doing here?" "Flying to Seattle," he said. "Got a job offer I couldn't turn down." My heart skipped once. "Me too." His eyebrows lifted. "No way." We both laughed at that, because how could we not? Of all the gates, all the cities, all the timings. "It's good to see you," I said, meaning it more than I expected. "You too," he replied. Then added, "I wasn't sure if I'd hear from you after that message." "I read it," I said. "A lot, actually." He nodded. "I meant it. I've meant it for years." The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was full, charged, but peaceful. Like something was finally catching up to itself. "I'm not who I was back then," I said. "I hope not," he smiled. "Neither am I." I didn't ask what had changed. I didn't need to. We sat there, two people on the edge of new cities, new lives, and maybe new stories. My flight began boarding. He stood, slinging his bag over his shoulder. "Same flight." "Yeah." He smiled. "Want to sit together?" I paused for half a beat, then nodded. "Yeah, I'd like that." And just like that, I wasn't boarding alone. My first day in Seattle felt like waking up on another planet. New city, new skyline. New badge clipped to my blazer. Even the air smelled different, less familiar, less heavy. I liked it. The office was modern and calm, with floor-to-ceiling windows and too many coffee options. My team lead, Celia, greeted me with a warm grin and a box of welcome snacks. "Ready to build something great?" she asked. I smiled back. "More than ready." By lunch, I had a desk with my name on it, a full calendar, and a dozen Slack channels buzzing with acronyms I didn't recognize yet. It was overwhelming, but in the best way. I felt like I was stepping into a version of myself that had been waiting behind a locked door. And then, during a break between onboarding sessions, my phone buzzed. Instagram. You were tagged in a post. Curious, I tapped the notification and froze. It was a quote card, one of those sad breakup meme accounts, the kind with gray backgrounds and messy typewriter font. She left without warning, but I guess she never really loved me enough to stay. Tagged me, posted by him. Celia passed behind me just as I lowered my phone. "Exes love drama," she said with a smirk, not missing a beat. "That face you just made. I've made it too." I blinked, startled. "I've been there," she added, leaning against the edge of my desk. "Moved across the country to escape a breakup, only to find out they were subtweeting me from 1,000 miles away." I let out a soft laugh. Why do they always make it sound like we vanished in the night? Because admitting we outgrew them hurts more than pretending we were cruel. She winked. "Don't let it ruin your day. You're here now. And we've got real work to do." I nodded, grateful for her timing and her honesty. She walked off and I glanced back at my phone. The post had 10 likes and one comment. "Damn, bro." I didn't reply. I didn't DM him. I didn't even block him, not yet. Let him watch. Let him see me standing taller, even when he tried to reduce me to a cryptic caption. Because this new life, it wasn't built on silence and shrinking. It was built on truth. And I was finally starting to live it. My first day in Seattle felt like waking up on another planet. New city, new skyline, new badge clipped to my blazer. Even the air smelled different, less familiar, less heavy. I liked it. The office was modern and calm, with floor-to-ceiling windows and too many coffee options. My team lead, Celia, greeted me with a warm grin and a box of welcome snacks. "Ready to build something great?" she asked. I smiled back. "More than ready." By lunch, I had a desk with my name on it, a full calendar, and a dozen Slack channels buzzing with acronyms I didn't recognize yet. It was overwhelming, but in the best way. I felt like I was stepping into a version of myself that had been waiting behind a locked door. And then, during a break between onboarding sessions, my phone buzzed. Instagram, you were tagged in a post. Curious, I tapped the notification and froze. It was a quote card, one of those sad breakup meme accounts, the kind with gray backgrounds and messy typewriter font. She left without warning, but I guess she never really loved me enough to stay. Tagged me, posted by him. Celia passed behind me just as I lowered my phone. Exes love drama, she said with a smirk, not missing a beat. That face you just made. I've made it too. I blinked, startled. I've been there, she added, leaning against the edge of my desk. Moved across the country to escape a breakup, only to find out they were subtweeting me from 1,000 miles away. I let out a soft laugh. Why do they always make it sound like we vanished in the night? Because admitting we outgrew them hurts more than pretending we were cruel. She winked, don't let it ruin your day, you're here now. And we've got real work to do. I nodded, grateful for her timing and her honesty. She walked off and I glanced back at my phone. The post had 10 likes and 1 comment. Damn bro. I didn't reply, I didn't DM him. I didn't even block him, not yet. Let him watch. Let him see me standing taller, even when he tried to reduce me to a cryptic caption. Because this new life, it wasn't built on silence and shrinking. It was built on truth. And I was finally starting to live it. It arrived on a Tuesday. Subject line, pitch opportunity VP request. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I had only been at the new job a few weeks. I hadn't even memorized half my team's names, let alone expected to be summoned by someone at the top. I clicked it open, scanning too fast, then reading again slower. Celia had recommended me for a presentation, not a small one. A full pitch to the executive team, a chance to propose a new cross-market strategy they'd been quietly exploring but hadn't yet built. The meeting was in 4 days. My name was listed at the top of the agenda. I sat back in my chair, heart thudding. The words on the screen blurred slightly, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of what this meant. She trusted me, they trusted me. And suddenly, all the noise, the petty posts, the group chat jabs, the shadow of my ex's bitterness, fell quiet. This was what I'd come for, but panic crept in anyway. What if I blew it? What if I wasn't ready? What if this opportunity turned into proof that I didn't belong? As if on cue, Celia stopped by my desk, coffee in hand. Got the email. I nodded, she grinned. I know it's fast, but you've got the spark, they need to see it. I blinked, why me? You listen, she said simply. You ask the right questions, you're not loud, but you're clear. I took a breath. I'm nervous. Good, she said, means it matters. She tapped the edge of my desk and walked away, leaving me alone with the kind of belief I hadn't felt from anyone in a long time. I opened a new document, started typing, not because I was ready, but because I was no longer waiting for permission to try. The first sign was subtle. A calendar invite moved. The second was a missing slide in my pitch deck, the one outlining the competitor audit I'd spent 2 days compiling. Gone as if it had never existed. I stared at my screen in disbelief, heart racing. Celia had just checked in that morning, told me everything looked sharp. I'd triple-checked the deck myself before logging off the night before. Someone had accessed it and edited it. I checked the version history. There it was, an edit, time-stamped at 1:13 a.m. from a user account I didn't recognize. I reported it quietly to it. Asked them to restore the version and help me identify who'd made the change. 3 hours later, they emailed back. It was someone from another team. A junior staff member recently transferred from the East Coast office. The name was unfamiliar until I did a quick search and found one tiny, telling detail. He followed my ex on Instagram and liked the post I'd been tagged in, the one about me ghosting him. I sat back in my chair, the realization cold and sharp. This wasn't a coincidence, it was a favor. A petty digital echo of someone still trying to rewrite my story. He hadn't moved on. He had recruited someone to bring the mess into my new life. Celia knocked gently on my desk just as I finished restoring the deck. You okay? She asked. I looked up. Someone tried to sabotage the pitch. Her eyes narrowed. You sure? I nodded, I'm sure. But I've got it back under control. She paused, then leaned in slightly. Do you want me to handle it? I thought about it, then shook my head. No, I'll document it, I'll protect the work. But I'm not giving him, or anyone, a moment more than they deserve. She smiled, you're stronger than most. I smiled back, I've had practice. I sent a formal report to IT and HR. Then I turned off notifications, closed every app, and went back to refining my slides. Because I wasn't here to fight ghosts. I was here to build something real. And no one, especially not someone clinging to a version of me I no longer recognized, was going to take that away. I recognized him the moment he stepped off the elevator. Same easy smile, same slightly tilted walk like he was always dodging invisible raindrops. Ravi, from my old office. From long meetings that turned into deep conversations. From coffees that lasted longer than they should have, even when we both swore we were too busy. Seattle looks good on you, he said, grinning as he approached my desk. I stood, surprised by how familiar he still felt. What are you doing here? Transferred last week, he said. Didn't want to say anything until it was final. Didn't want to jinx it. Still superstitious. Only about the important things, he said. Then he added, like you. I laughed, and for the first time in a long time, it wasn't forced. He set his bag down at the workstation across from mine. Looks like we're neighbors now. I nodded, trying not to let the small warmth blooming in my chest take up too much space. The last time we saw each other, I was still with my ex. Still bending myself into someone else's expectations. Still doubting if it was okay to want more. Ravi never pushed. He always just noticed. The way I changed the subject when asked about my relationship. The way I brushed off compliments. The way I carried myself like someone holding up two people's worth of effort. Now, he looked at me like he could already see the shift. You seem different, he said, opening his laptop. Good different. Confident lighter. Real. I bit my lip, smiling. It's been a journey. I'm glad you made it here, he said. So am I. As the day went on, we settled into a rhythm. Passing notes about office quirks, sharing jokes about corporate buzzwords, catching up on the months that passed between our last coffee and this reunion. At one point, during a meeting, he leaned over and whispered, By the way, I still remember what you wore the day you got your job offer. I glanced at him, surprised. White shirt, navy pants. You had that little gold pin on your collar. You looked like you could run the world. I smiled. That's oddly specific. I notice things, he said, shrugging. Especially when they matter. There was something in his voice, unspoken, unhurried. He didn't ask for anything. He just showed up, and for now, that was enough. His birthday came quietly this year. No invitation, no countdown. No curated rooftop playlist. Just the date circled in my mental calendar like a faded scar. I woke up, saw the reminder on my phone, and felt nothing. No ache, no urge to text, no guilt. I got up, made my coffee, and stood by the window while it brewed, the early Seattle rain dotting the glass. I didn't think about what he might be doing, or who he might be with. I didn't even wonder if he was thinking about me. But memories still came, soft, distant. I remembered last year. The way he beamed holding court at his party, drink in hand, basking in the attention. The way I stood beside him like a placeholder, like decoration. The way his face changed when he found the Seattle email on my phone. Not confused, not hurt, just angry he wasn't the center anymore. I remembered the quiet ride home. The long text he sent the next morning, filled with guilt spun as grief. The way I felt like a stranger inside my own story. And then I remembered what came after. The flight. The freedom. The first sip of coffee in my new apartment. The email from Celia. The moment I pitched my idea and didn't stutter. The way Ravi looked at me and didn't see what I had survived, he saw what I was becoming. That was the difference. He saw me now, not just my scars. Not just my silence. I took my mug and curled up on the window seat, watching the city wake up. My phone buzzed once. Zara. Happy free from that man day. I laughed out loud, real and full. I texted back, celebrating with rain and quiet joy. Because that's what this was. Quiet joy, not loud, not dramatic, just calm, just steady. I didn't need closure anymore. I didn't need his apology or his attention or his explanation. I had something better, peace. My apartment wasn't much: bare walls, secondhand furniture, a mismatched rug I found at a weekend market, but it felt like mine. It was the first space I'd lived in that didn't carry echoes of someone else's mood. No emotional landmines, no tiptoeing around silence. Just warmth, freedom, and the scent of lemon from the candle on my windowsill. That Friday night, I hosted my first game night. Zara flew in just for it, because some milestones deserve a front row seat. Ravi brought wine and a giant bag of chips, and Celia showed up with a charcuterie board that looked like it belonged in a magazine. There were new friends too, people from the office, from the building, from a yoga class I joined on a whim. They all sat in my tiny living room, laughing, tossing cards around, shouting over board game rules no one fully understood. It was loud, chaotic, real, and I didn't feel like I was performing. I didn't feel like I had to explain myself. I just felt home. At one point, I slipped into the kitchen to grab more cups, and Ravi followed. He handed me a glass of wine, then leaned against the counter. "You've built something beautiful," he said, nodding toward the laughter in the other room. I smiled. "It's messy." "Yeah," he said, "but it's yours. And everyone here showed up for you." That part hit me harder than I expected. Because for so long, I'd been showing up alone, waiting, hoping, trying to fill the silence with love that wasn't being returned. Now I was surrounded by people who met me halfway. People who didn't just show up for the party, but who helped clean up after. People who asked how I was and waited to hear the real answer. Ravi bumped his shoulder against mine. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said softly. "For once, I really am." We stood there for a moment, letting the sound of laughter wash over us. I didn't need a spotlight. I didn't need a stage. I just needed this. Connection without cost. Joy without conditions. A room full of people who didn't ask me to shrink. The night had started to quiet. The last wine glasses were rinsed and drying beside the sink. The couch was littered with blankets and game pieces, like joy had left a trail behind. Zara was asleep in the guest room. Ravi had gone home, after lingering a little too long at the door, like he wasn't quite ready to leave, and truthfully, neither was I. I was wrapping myself in my robe when my phone buzzed. His name lit up the screen. I stared at it, frozen, not because I wanted to answer, but because a part of me, the old part, still wondered what now. It had been months. Months since the party. Months since the last long message. Months since the screenshots and the sabotage. I hadn't heard his voice since the night I told him I was done. Now, at 12:06 a.m., he was calling. The phone rang once, twice. Then it just kept going. I didn't move, didn't touch it. Just watched it glow and pulse and fill the room with everything I'd already chosen to leave behind. When the ringing finally stopped, I exhaled. Deep. Quiet, he didn't leave a voicemail, he didn't text. And I didn't wonder why. I didn't imagine what he might have said, because I knew it didn't matter. This wasn't about him anymore. This wasn't a test of forgiveness or closure or grace. This was the final echo of a story I had already finished writing, and I was living in the sequel. I placed the phone face down on the windowsill. Then, without hesitation, I opened my settings, blocked the number. No anger, no sadness. Just peace. I turned off the lights and crawled into bed, the city humming softly outside. He had finally called, but I had finally stopped waiting. It was raining the next morning, soft, misty, the kind of Seattle drizzle that felt more like a whisper than a storm. I decided to walk anyway. No headphones. No phone in hand, just me, my coat, and the sound of the city breathing. There was a market a few blocks away I'd been meaning to visit, fresh flowers, local bread, the kind of place I once imagined going with someone else. But today, I went with myself. I picked up sunflowers, not because they were my favorite, but because they reminded me of who I was when I first started dreaming about more. The cashier smiled. "Rain never stops you, huh?" I grinned. "Not anymore." I tucked the bouquet into my tote and stepped back onto the sidewalk, head high, chin steady. Half a block down, just as I was crossing the street, I heard it. Someone behind me, not his voice, not the past. It was mine. "Hey," a voice called, "is that Wait Havana?" I turned. It was Celia, jogging up under a shared umbrella with another coworker. She said my name again, smiling wide, as if it carried weight now. And it did. It wasn't just a name anymore, it was a declaration. A reclaiming. A reminder that I was never too much, never too ambitious, never too late, just me. Standing on a rainy sidewalk, arms full of sunflowers, heart finally light. Celia caught up and looped her arm through mine. "Brunch?" she asked. I nodded. "Let's go." And as we walked forward, my name still echoing softly behind me, I didn't look back. Not once. Because the girl who once waited by her phone, begging to be remembered, was gone. And in her place stood someone whole. Someone seen. Someone who had finally remembered herself. Thank you for watching. Please do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I love you all.